Hey guys, what's up? I just wanted to preface this video by saying that I have a sample pack for sale. It's available on my Selfie, which you can find down below in the description. I'll make it the first link in there. Yeah, it's just $5, and it's got everything you need to make a lo-fi house. It's got some cool sample loops, some cool synth presets, some cool 303 loops, some cool bass lines, some drum loops with the full construction kit of all the stems, some drums, some kicks and snares and claps and hi-hats and percussion. And yeah, it's pretty nice for $5, I'll say. But you can just grab that at the link down below. And yeah, thank you so much. The video is going to start now. Alright, so we're in this project file. I've just called it Lo-Fi House Day 3. It's the same stuff from the other two videos, but now we're going to dive in and we're going to mix and master this track. And I'm going to have this project file as well as some mixing and mastering presets in the description. So you can just download this and you'll be able to go in and also download like some mixing and mastering presets that will hopefully can help you while making your own tracks and help you get your mixes a little bit cleaner. So anyway, the first thing I'm going to start with here is the kick and bass. I believe I touched on this in the other video, but with this kind of music and like most dance music, these two elements are really like the foundation of everything. So you really want to get them working before, like working together and making the groove before you go in and start trying to make other stuff. And in this case, mix the other stuff. If you can get these two working, the other elements, not only will they come a lot easier, but they'll sound a lot better when you finally do get everything together. So I'm just going to play these two together and start setting some levels, and then I'll say more about what I'm doing. Okay, so I pretty much got that down. Really, I just turned the bass up a little bit and then turned the kick up a little bit, but I also put this EQ on because in this area of the frequency spectrum, it sounded a little bit muddy and just kind of unnecessary to have things there, especially because our main sample has a lot of information around that frequency range. So I just wanted to cut that a little bit, so I cut it like just above 6 dB, I guess it's -5 or whatever. But yeah, so those two are sounding pretty good together. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to keep going with the drums because like the drums and the bass are really the foundation of all this, and I want to keep working on those. So I'm going to solo the hi-hat now. Okay, so something I want to touch on here is these 909 and like just generally like a lot of older drum machine samples are really good, but they tend to have these weird resonant frequencies in them, and I haven't heard a lot of people talk about this. I just recently learned this, but you need to go through and cut those because it's going to clean up your mix a lot if you're using these. So the way you find them is you just get an EQ, like a parametric EQ, and you just you make like one band like I've done here, and then you turn the gain up all the way and you make it have a very tight Q, like about like that. And then you just sweep it through the frequencies like I was doing until you find one where it really sounds like it's like it's almost like a whistling, like if you hear it. It's right there, and you can see it too. So you gotta get rid of that. So the way you do that then, once you've located it, is you just turn it down all the way. And there you go, your hi-hat is a lot cleaner. So the last thing that I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut out a bunch of the bass from this because we don't need it, it's a hi-hat. And that's pretty much good. So now we can get the clap on here. I think I'm going to throw some EQ on, and I might need to turn it up or down, I'm not sure. I'm just going to cut out the low end. Okay, so the clap is pretty much good. After that, I should probably turn on this cassette noise, and I will cut the bass out on that. You don't really need to be too specific when you're cutting out low end with like these noise samples, because I mean, you really just have it on there for texture. So even if you end up like taking it up to here and cutting a little bit of like the frequencies that are in the sample, it's not gonna make a huge difference. You just need to hear that kind of hiss on top of it. Yeah, about like that is good. So from here, I'm just gonna keep going through. There's not a whole lot of elements in this track, so it's pretty easy. But I'm just gonna keep going through and like sort of going up the chain of how much each element is a part of the foundation of the track, if that makes any sense. Like now I got the drums and I got the bass working, so now we're gonna start putting the main sample on top of it. Cause that's like a pretty important thing to the track, and it's not like too much of like on top of everything. It's still like in the sort of, you know, mid area. And yeah, so we're just gonna cut out a little bit of the bass from that. I'm just checking for resonant frequencies, but I didn't really see anything or hear anything. We don't need to do too much. Something I want to touch on here is that, you know, you don't want to be like coloring your sounds too much during this stage. You really want to get that out of the way before now. So like, that's why I was doing that in the other videos, even though this is the mixing one. Technically mixing is like how it is sonically, but in this case we're really just using mixing to clean the whole thing up and ultimately make it loud enough for playing out and stuff. So we've got these elements working together. That's really the like meat of our track. Like that's where the groove and a lot of the harmonic content is coming from. But after that, we're just gonna add let's add on this ride cymbal and the 707 stuff. And I'm gonna show you the same thing I did with the hi-hat with the ride. I'll solo the ride. So, like I said, these old drum machine samples are really good, but a lot of times they have those sort of whistling resonances in them, and we need to find them and remove them. So let's do that with this one. So I've just turned this band like way up, way higher than you would ever want to, and I'm setting a very tight cue, and I'm just going to sweep it through the frequencies. You hear that? It's like whistling. So we're just going to cut that out. And then I'm going to search through because I think I heard a little bit more in some other areas as well. And you don't have to just be limited to doing this one time on any particular sound. You can do this as many times until you get rid of all of them, because a lot of times the sample can have, you know, multiple different sort of ringing frequencies. And yeah, so we've cleaned this one up a lot now, so we've just done that, those cuts to it. And I'll show you what it sounds like before and after so you can see how much this really cleaned it up. So I'm really going to solo the ride now. And let's do, here's before. And here's after. So you can hear it really makes a world of difference. I'm also going to cut out the low end on this one. But it really makes a world of difference. And it's one of those things where you wouldn't necessarily notice it in the track. But that's good. That's like what you want, because you want it to be, you don't want it to be noticeable that you did this. Like the big other takeaway picture here, or big picture that I also want you to take away from this is like, mixing isn't about doing drastic things. It's about doing several small, little subtle things that come together to make a big picture. Like I said, it's like, you know, small brush strokes make the whole painting or whatever. So that in the mix sounds like this. So we got all that. Let's do this vocal loop next because it's in there. There's not much to do on that. I'm just going to cut out the low end and just make sure that that's all clean. Because as you can see, there was a little bit of low end information happening here. And then the only other thing to put in here is the 303. Now the 303 is a little bit of a tricky case because it is a very like dynamic instrument sonically, if that makes any sense. Like, I don't want to say it's super dynamic as far as volume dynamics goes, but it's very dynamic in the sense of, like, there's a lot, like, because of the filter sweeping throughout the track to different places, there's a lot of different little resonant frequencies and, like, nasty things that you sort of get that you want to get rid of while you're mixing. So let's do that. I'm just going to play through this loop, and I'll show you there's two particular areas that I'm going to cut, but you'll see as I'm doing it. Okay, so I didn't do too much. I mean, I did cut quite drastically, relatively speaking, but I didn't do too much because it's very tight Q values that I have for these two bands. So I've just cut here and I've cut here because when the filter was like up pretty high, like around this area of the frequency spectrum was getting kind of, there were like some nasty kind of overtones we were getting. And then when it was low, we were getting some nasty stuff around here that was clouding up our mix. So I wanted to sort of solve that. And then I'm also just going to do a quick little cut of some low end here, just like that. And yeah, all our elements are pretty much mixed. So the whole mix should be sounding like this now. I'll skip to another 303 part. So like it's pretty fat sounding, it's pretty thick, but we're only peaking at about minus 4.83 here, which is not quite loud enough. The thing is that what you want to do when you're mixing is you want to turn everything down and get the mix sounding like very clear and like you don't want anything to be right at 0 dB, you know? And you want to, you don't want to get your sound sounding loud with like compression and extreme limiting and just turning the gain up and like sausage fattener and stuff. The way you want to make your sounds loud is like relatively. So like, for example, my kick is the loudest element in the mix, but that's only relative to the other ones. It's still only peaking at minus 10 dB, which is like, you know, pretty low. And that's really the point. A lot of hip-hop producers will tell you this. It isn't about, like, using a bunch of compression to make your kick really loud or, you know, using a bunch of, like, I guess distortion or limiting or whatever you want to try to get your sounds louder than the other ones. It's just a matter of turning everything down so that that one element is just the loudest or it's as loud as you want it to be in the mix. And so that's really what I've done here. But yeah, I mean, yes, your music will be kind of quiet before mastering, but I mean, like I said, that's only relative. You just turn your speakers up and then you can see that it's like, you know, it's gonna be loud. Now, usually at this point you would export the entire track and do what's called a pre-master, where it's just an export of this mixed track that's not as loud as it's gonna be after the master, and then you would master that. But because this is a pretty simple track, I'm just going to master it in this project file. And that will allow me to also just give this away and some other mastering stuff when I give this project file away in the description, which you can download right now. It's down there. And also caught my sample pack. So anyway, I didn't do too much for the mastering. I just did this dynamic tube, which sounds like this. So I actually just turned that drive up 1 decibel, but that's just pretty simple. I just turned the output up a little bit. I just turned the dry wet up all the way. The drive is there, the tone is there, and then these are just set default. And so what that's doing is it's just, the dynamic tube is very similar to the saturator, but it's kind of like between no saturation and the saturator, which can get kind of nasty very quickly. This is sort of like a good way to bridge that gap and make the sound, like give it that sort of saturation and warmth, but without having to, yeah, like I said, make it kind of nasty in the way that the saturator can do. And the only other thing here is we have a limiter, and I'll explain why. If you see, our track is hitting at about minus 3.76, and that's just for as long as I played it. It might go a little bit higher, up to like minus 3. That's like the maximum, that's the peak that we have right now. And that's not quite loud enough. We need things to really hit 0 dB without just being a brick that's just stuck there, but we need that to be our peak, and we need to have like some, you know, curves and stuff. So what I did was I put this limiter on, and it's just boosting it up 3 dB. And the reason why I'm using a limiter instead of like a utility for gain, because you can just turn the gain up with the utility, is because there are some things that are going to go over 0 dB. I mean, that's okay with this kind of music, but what the limiter is going to do is flatten those out and keep them from going above 0 dB and keep it from clipping. Because clipping is just when it goes above 0 dB. And usually that would be a problem, like if you were trying to make a super clean mix. But because of the lo-fi nature of this music, and because of, honestly, a lot of this music is very over-compressed sounding, this kind of works in our favor here. So I'll just play it with that. And yeah, you can see it's hitting 0 now. It's loud. It's loud enough that it's just like a normal track. But it's hitting 0, but it's still bouncing a little bit. We're getting some dynamic range there. It's not just like a brick. Like if I turn this up more, you can see it just stays there, and it doesn't move. So we really want a little bit of dynamic range in our track. I mean, obviously we're not going to have, like, you know, the kind you would have, like, with, like, a live drummer or something, but a bit of it is good, as much as we can get with this kind of music. So yeah, that's pretty much it. That's the end of this series. I'm glad I was able to kind of show everybody, you know, how to make a track from start to finish. Hopefully you learned something. I know a lot of people were requesting the mix and master tutorial, so I'm glad I could finally do that. And, yeah, go check out my sample pack. Like I said in the intro, it is in the description. It's the first link in there. It's just $5, and you get a bunch of samples. It's, like, everything you could need to make lo-fi house. It's great. You can even use it for other styles of house music, you know? Like, totally. But, yeah, I hope you learned something. I hope you like this. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe, maybe share it. I'd really appreciate that. And, yeah, have a great day.